Okay, today's video, we're going to talk about Google's ad preview and diagnosis tool, which basically is a part of Google Ads system that shows you if your ad is actually showing on Google Ads or not. Of course, you can search yourself, but if you're not in the area in which you're advertising or targeting, you're not going to get your ad to show up for yourself on Google. Let alone potentially if you're not in a certain audience, like sometimes, of course, you could only have your Google ads show up if you've been to your website before, and you could set up your targeting that way, and you could use the Google preview tool to then ultimately see and pretend like you've been on your site. I know that's not the best example, but if you're on a certain audience that you need to be on, in addition to typing in a certain keyword, it could show you if you show up or not. What I like to use it the most for is to actually see if I show up in different cities. Like even if I'm targeting nationwide for an e-commerce campaign, I want to see if I show up in Dallas and New York, and just like run an audit with it, which is basically the main use of the tool that I use it for nowadays. But I wanted to make this video to explain why not to put too much stock into this tool and you're not showing up, because a lot of people that don't understand the system and don't have the experience that I do, or just an ad manager would that does this for a living, is you actually show up more on Google than what the ad preview and diagnosis tool actually shows you. Literally speaking, it can say you don't show up on the tool and you go to Google and it'll show up there. So that's one thing to mention up front. Beyond that, there's a much better way to see if you actually show up on Google in a bunch of different locations. Of course, you can't use the, put yourself on a different audience, like on the ad diagnosis and preview tool to see if you should show up or not, see if you show up or not. But you can actually pretend like you're in Dallas or New York or whatever and see if you show up for a certain keyword with a secondary tool called iSearchFrom. This has become a very commonly known tool in the advertiser space. A lot of people in the SEO space use this, but also people that run Google Ads know this, but it's not known of in the general the general public, which is why I wanted to make this video and explain why this is better and make you aware of it. That said, getting into the content of the video, I still don't understand why Google cannot get this ad preview and diagnosis tool to work reliably, literally speaking, where it says you don't show up and then if you go and check on Google, you do. Why does it work like that? I still don't know. Other than, to say unless you were conspiracy minded and wanted to say here that they don't want you to think you're showing up so that you'll bid more. And then naturally that getting people to bid more will make Google more money. Therefore, that's why they do it. I think it's just incompetence, but hey, who knows? I've seen weird stuff that Google's done in their own self-interest like that many times. So it certainly is possible. Part of, though, why, for sure, as a secondary part to what I just said, why the Google ad preview and diagnosis tool doesn't show you as showing up on Google when you check on Google yourself, and you are, is due to Google's system primarily working off of machine learning models now, and that affects whether or not you actually show up on Google, where you legitimately should show up on Google because you're targeting that keyword and you don't. Back in the day when I started in 2005 running ads on Google Ads, you used to be able to target, if you were targeting red shoes as a keyword, you basically showed up for that all the time and that was it. And that's as complicated as the system was. Nowadays, it's completely different. It's still predicated on that generalized idea, but Google monitors everything you do online. What websites you go to, what searches you make, who you are as a person, what you're interested in, what you say next to your device, because they can get data not only from their apps, but people that have other apps that record your voice. They buy data from those apps, and they construct a profile around you as a person, and their goal is to get more and more data on you so they understand more and more about what you are and who you like and what your propensities are, so that they can sell predictions about you to their advertisers so that the advertisers get a better return, and therefore they'd be willing to spend more to get in front of you because they understand how to better sell to you than they would otherwise, and sell their ad space at a higher rate than they would otherwise, so to say. So going back to the example with the keyword red shoes, Google will monitor all the people that click through if you're bidding on red shoes, clicking through, and then decide to buy or not buy. And when somebody buys, they look at all the thousands of traits of those individual people that bought versus the traits of the people who did not buy to come to conclusions as to in the future whether or not you should show up for a person typing in red shoes or should you not. So it's not an on or off thing at all. And, naturally their goal is to have you show up for stuff related to red shoes when and if it looks like it's statistically likely a person would buy from you. So let's say they find out if you're female and have over $100,000 a year income, that you're like a grand slam prospect for your product line that you have on your website that you're trying to sell. So, and they see that every time someone comes through and searches for red shoes, they're buying 90% of the time. Well, naturally, at that point, the algorithm that Google has says, well, if they're searching for big red shoes, it's likely to convert for that a person that has that income and so forth. So we're going to have you show up for that. And you weren't, and they weren't having you show up for that before necessarily. Start testing it out. Verify what they think was going to be true. That is, a person showing up for this other term would be profitable to you. The user gets what they want. That is, they get a site and find a product that they wanted to buy and do buy. And then they are able to build up how much you can spend as an advertiser and therefore make. And then furthermore, more accurately serve their users. So the users want to come back to Google and click on ads more in the future. And then ultimately as well, understand how to sell the ad space for more money as well as a part of all of this. So the reason why I explain all this is to give you a direct example of how Google's system work nowadays truly. It's still based on a keyword system if we're talking about Google search ads here. It's just also layered. There's data, machine learning involved in the process, and they can decide whether you show up for that red shoes keyword 10% of the time, 20, 30, based upon of the people searching for red shoes, which ones are likely to have a person that would be happy to get to your site and buy versus not. And so therefore, as it comes to the ad preview and diagnosis tool here, going back to what we were talking about originally, you may not actually show up only about 10% of the time for a keyword because that's all it's profitable for you to do, and that where the buyers are, there's only 10% of that keyword that's profitable to you. So if you use the ad preview and diagnosis tool, it says you don't show up for that keyword red shoes, even though it shows every time you show up for red shoes, it's profitable. But because it's only profitable in 10% of the instances if someone searches for red shoes, therefore, the ad preview and diagnosis tool is not going to show you as showing up when really you do show up. It's just part of the time. Follow me? So that's a big reason why also, in addition to what I was talking about before, why it says you don't show up even though you are bidding on that term. And for many of the terms you bid on, why it is that it's saying that you don't show up for those terms. If you do not have a lot of competition or been advertising very long on Google Ads, when I say very long, I mean you haven't been advertising for several years already, then the ad preview and diagnosis tool isn't going to be very reliable. It's going to not show you as showing up very often, whereas the longer you advertise, meaning the more Google system realizes, and assuming you're a good advertiser on top of it, that is, you have good click-through rates, good conversion rates, the more naturally you are going to show up for your keywords, and therefore the more likely the ad preview and diagnosis tool is going to show you as showing up. And of course, if you have less competition, it's going to show you as showing up via the ad preview and diagnosis tool a higher percentage of the time as well, because naturally, when the options are of 10 people that can show up for a particular keyword at the top of Google, and only 4 can, it's a grab bag whether you show up or not. Whereas if you're the only advertiser for a keyword, you're going to show up basically every time, because why wouldn't Google want to not have you show up and monetize that ad space? Now, naturally, by the way, if their choice is either show you or nothing, a lot of times they'll show nothing. If you are, of the user you're getting in front of, you are not giving them a good experience. They get to your website, they bounce back to Google. Why? Because people are going to be less likely to click on ads in the future if the ads that Google has show up for the user are on point for, helpful for them as a whole, basically. So anyway, with that said, a much better solution is a tool named iSearchFrom. You can go to iSearchFrom.com to find this tool. But what it'll do, like I was briefly mentioning before, is it'll give you a more reliable way to see if you show up for your keywords like you want to. And it's better than going to Google search by itself because it allows you to set your location to a bunch of different sample locations and see the Google search results based upon being somebody that's, in one area versus another. It also, even if you were like only targeting people in the same exact location that you're in, iSearch From is a better tool than just going to Google search by itself because it's going to, based upon your fingerprinting you as a user, it's going to give you a more accurate representation of, what do you actually show up versus having you show up because you've been to your website before and more likely to show up because they think you're more likely to convert on your site, if that makes sense. So I use iSearch From all the time, like I mentioned before, primarily just to be able to see, do I show up in a lot of different cities? If I'm targeting nationwide, I want to make sure I show up in most of the cities just to see if there's a problem. Now, naturally, if there is a problem like that, a lot of times, like if I'm only showing up in some cities and not others, that's not necessarily always bad because Google can find out through their testing, Miami converts, Denver doesn't, and that's okay. But if I see that the return is off the charts on a certain keyword and I'm rarely showing up, then I might be able to just do something about it. That is mainly just be able to bid higher. Or I could realize that, the potential in the future is going to be greater because once Google figures out my ads and my landing pages perform better, I'm going to have a lot of more potential to scale this campaign because they're going to start showing it in more cities and more often. That it can give me information about that specifically. It can give me information specifically that I need to spend a little bit more per click to get shown more. And if I do spend more per click specifically, I'll actually get an immediate result from it versus spending, you're showing up virtually everywhere and you spend more, you're going to basically pay more, but not get a proportional increase in ROI. So just as a small side as to like why mainly even use it and what you could use it for. But anyway, long story short, Google's ad preview and diagnosis tool isn't very accurate at all for several reasons. Namely, because you don't always show up for certain keywords, so it's not very good. But even where you do show up and you were going to do a vanity check for you showing up for a certain keyword on Google search, it rarely matches up. I don't know, rarely is a bad term. Let's say 30% matches up with what the ad preview and diagnosis tool actually shows up, which is a pretty good number there. So in other words, if ad preview and diagnosis tool says you don't show up, there's like a 30% chance that you actually do show up on Google, or even greater, obviously, and it depends on your situation, mainly depending on how long you've been advertising, because if you've been advertising a while, you show up a higher percentage of the time because the system understands that you're a good advertiser and you should push the other ads out of the way in favor of your ad. So, naturally, the ad preview and diagnosis tool seems to be more accurate once it has more data about you. Whereas if it has little data about you, it'll rarely say in the ad preview and diagnosis tool that you show up, whereas on Google search you will show up. So the more familiar they are with you, the more the ad preview and diagnosis tool will accurately show you as showing up on Google when you actually do, to clear it all up as to what I was just saying there. Apart from that, I don't really have too much I can share about this. If you have any questions, leave me a comment below. I get back to every single person who leaves me a question or comment on this channel, usually within 24 hours. You can ask me any ad-related question you'd like, and I'll try to use my 15 plus years of experience doing ad strategy and management to figure out and put you on the right track with what you're doing as a thank you for watching the channel and helping us grow. If you are looking for accurate information on how to make millions of dollars of running ads for your business, this is the channel you want to subscribe to because it's coming from a person who has firsthand experience managing dozens of ad accounts and just focusing on the strategy side of things, as we have staff that do the other parts of what we're doing, and therefore you're getting direct access to the stuff that works and doesn't work on these different ad networks, Google, Facebook, and so forth, whereas 99% of the other information that you find online is coming from secondhand, third-hand sources, or people that just sell courses, but they don't manage ads like I do, or whatever. So if you're serious about making money with running ads for your business, this is the channel to subscribe to, and you should subscribe to it right now. Furthermore, if you want to be able to make a bunch of money online running ads for your business, you can find my blog at guaranteedppc.com/blog. Whereas the channel has more high-level information. You can find actual step-by-step strategies that I use to make money on our clients' accounts there that you can follow with screenshots and everything else. So if you like the channel, you're going to love my blog even more in addition to that. Beyond this, if you want somebody that can just get your results on your ads without having to do any of the hard work, if you will, to put in to get those results, this is exactly what I do for clients that are firm. And we are the only agency out there that is an ad agency that will work on your account without taking fees unless we can increase your profitability on your ads up front. We're the only agency that does that. The only catch is we got to know we can get great results on your stuff before we begin on your stuff. That is, we only take so many clients on. But if you want to see if we can work together like that on a contingency basis, you can reach out to me at guaranteeppc.com and I'll estimate how much profit I can give you in addition to what you're already making from your ads or with a new campaign that you're potentially trying to start up. As a side, if you're not looking to work with an ad agency, if we worked in your niche market before, and we've worked in hundreds of niches in the last 10 years of running Guaranteed PPC ad agency, we can actually give you the working ad templates and landing page templates and campaign templates that work for your niche market already and get the same results we're getting in your niche market already for a one-time small fee and right away just by copying and pasting whatever works for your market as far as a sales funnel into your ad accounts. There's no way you're going to save money or time doing all the same stuff for yourself if we've already spent years developing the best, most profitable ads in your market. So you should definitely reach out to us, and we can tell you what results you would get with our templates up front if we've worked in your niche market before up front. We've got people using these templates, by the way, to start whole other businesses from scratch. If you want a business that's basically on training wheels right from the start with an ad template that works for that niche market. We've got people that start e-commerce businesses with our templates. If you're in a different country than our current client, you want to use the template that we have to sell a certain product, you can sell it in your market and do well. I mean, as long as you're in a different geographic area, there's no conflict of interest, and that's how we're able to do this. Same thing if you want to sell leads. If you want to do a lead generation business, you get a template that will generate leads at a rock bottom cost in a certain niche market, like plumbing, like carpentry or whatever, which is a great passive income business idea, by the way. Anyway, if you're interested in starting a business as well, using some of these templates as a basis, as a jump-off point, you can reach out to me at guaranteeppc.com. With that said, I'll wrap it up with that. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in my next video where we have another great strategy for you then. See you later.